Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's Planning and Development Control Committee. My name is Councillor Omid Miri and I'm chair of the committee. Before we start, just a few housekeeping points. The fire exit is towards the back in the lift lobby and down the stairs, but there are no fire alarm tests scheduled for tonight. And the toilets are also at the back in the lift lobby. So we now move on to item 1, which is apologies for absence. And we do have apologies from Councillor Harvey and Councillor Carmel. That can be noted, please. Moving to item 2 is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Moving on to item 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on 5th of September 2023. Are the minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, brilliant. And that brings us to item 4, which is 92 Wood Lane. Can the presenting officer, John Sanchez, please introduce the report? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to run through the presentation for this detailed planning application in relation to the redevelopment of 92 Wood Lane. I'm also going to summarise the proposal but before then, I'd like to draw the members' attention to the addendum. So in terms of the addendum, I'd like to draw members' attention to, first of all, condition number 56. Officers are recommending that this particular condition be deleted from the recommendation, and the wording relating to the control of the student accommodation during and outside the academic year will be instead captured within the section 106 heads of terms. The other item that I wish to draw members' attention to, which isn't on the addendum, is with regard to the reference of the underpass, which is currently captured within the existing section 106 for the master plan. The intention is that we will include that particular schedule of the existing section 106 in this planning permission as it relates to the existing wording relates to the delivery of plot A and G. So the purpose is that we capture that also within this planning permission. Next, I'd like to move on to drawing the members' attention to some representations that we've received since the publication of the committee report. First of all, we've had a representation from the Hammersmith Society, who support the comments that have been made by the St Quintins and Woodlands Neighbourhood Forum in terms of the level of overbuilding in the location, as well as around the OPDC and North Acton. The lack of engagement, lack of action in terms of carrying out Imperial's community responsibilities under the Section 106 and SIL. In terms of the existing and proposed student accommodation, questions have been raised in terms of how it's being used outside term time. And for these reasons, the Hammersmith Society state that the proposed development does not comply with the London Plan and Local Plan, and therefore request that it should be refused. We've also received 5 further representations from residents in Urnham Road, plus an additional representation where no address is given. Generally, the comments have been referred to in the committee report. However, I'll just highlight some of the points that have been received today. First of all, residents consider that proposals that have moved significantly from the original plans and the fulfillment of the promises that were made on the master plan, including the delivery of the green square in the middle of the site for public amenity, a cycle route under the Westway, and the underpass to connect to North Kensington. There's reference to the latest proposal is much higher than first proposed, will increase the number of students on the site, and there is also different use at ground floor than previously. There's reference to the loss of greenery and that few trees will be left standing. The promise of a cycle route underneath the Westway to avoid Wood Lane traffic. Effectively, the proposal will now leave a narrow walking route from Shingfield Street past the proposed refuse store of Plot A. And lastly, it's added that if the committee is mindful to grant planning permission, they should do so on the basis with strict conditional consent in connection with the provision of a safe cycle route under the Westway from Shingfield Street, the delivery of the underpass, and a revised proposal that delivers much more promised green space for the public amenity. The application submitted to the council was submitted in December 2022. The proposals have been developed by Imperial College London as the site owner and the applicant. Permission was initially sought to redevelop the site for 212 student rooms and commercial floor space on the ground floor within a Part 3 up to Part 12-storey building. Now, during the course of the application and following the first round of consultation, comments were received from both the Health and Safety Executive and from the Mayor of London, seeking the provision of a second staircase within the development on the basis that the building exceeds the 18 metres or 13 metres. Amendments have been designed into the proposal, and whilst the proposal now includes a second staircase, this has not impacted on the overall envelope massing of the building. The proposal also now includes 216 student rooms rather than 212. There's been effectively a reorganization in terms of the typology of the studios units being provided. In the original submission, there was the provision of the standard room and premium rooms. Effectively, now we have 2 types of standard rooms. There's the minimum size room at 17 square meters, all the way up to the premium rooms. And then there's also the provision of 10%, 21 rooms, which will be wheelchair accessible rooms. Of the 216 rooms that are going to be delivered, 35% of them would be affordable student rooms. The application site measures 0.23 hectares in area and forms part of the wider Imperial College White City North campus, and is the last plot of the master plan to be constructed. The rectangular shaped site currently comprises a temporary surface car park lined by mature trees on Wood Lane and Shingfield Street. The wider White City North Campus is approximately 2.27 hectares in size and broadly square in shape. North Campus has been developed under 2 phases over a period of approximately 10 to 11 years and was originally granted as a hybrid permission in 2012. So that they included 6 buildings. Some were granted permission in detail, others were granted permission in outline. Now, the two of the buildings that were granted in outline permission originally were plots A and G. And then there was a subsequent planning application submitted in 2018, effectively a drop-in application for plots A and G, which was subsequently approved on the 3rd of November 2020. There's also been a separate variation permission that was granted in 2020 to the original outline permission, which effectively involved the removal of a basement car park that was proposed in the central square, together with amendments to the provision of grade vehicle and cycle parking facilities and changes to the public realm and landscaping. The next 2 slides show you areas of the site in context with the surrounding area. So the campus itself comprises a mix of uses, including medical, life science, engineering, and technology research and development uses. In buildings ranging between 9 and 13, the 10-story grad pad student accommodation and the 35-story residential tower. The surrounding townscape is a mix of styles and forms. To the north of the site and campus, you have an area, a residential in character. The site is bounded by 2 to 3-story residential properties. On Shingfield Street and beyond Shingfield Street, there are similar residential streets, including Ernham Road and Nascot Street. To the east of the grad pad buildings, you have the West London Overground Railway line and the administrative boundary between Hammersmith and Fulham and the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. To the west on Wood Lane, you have Cavell House, which is a 4-story building comprising commercial use on the ground floor with residential on the upper floor. You have Nightingale House, which is on the corner of Wood Lane and Duquesne Road, which is a 4-story block. And then to the south of Cavell House, you have 227 Wood Lane, and which is a site which has got a resolution to grant planning permission for 60 affordable homes and 210 shared living units. The site itself is located within the White City Opportunity Area, as designated in the London Plan, and the White City Regeneration Area in the local plan. The site also is located within WCR A1, which is White City East. Shingfield Street demarks the most northerly point of White City Regeneration Area. The site itself is not located in a conservation area, which is just shown there in green to the south. The closest conservation areas are the Old Oak and Wormwood conservation area to the west, the Wood Lane conservation area to the south, which is highlighted there. And then within Royal Borough, Kensington, Chelsea, you have the Oxford Garden and St. Quintin's conservation area. These are a couple of images of, first of all, of the grad pad Block B development. Now, this comprises of postgraduate student accommodation, 606 postgrad units and 9 residential units for key workers. This development was built out before 2012 and is built out in the form of 4 connecting finger blocks, which have a step arrangement from 3-storey on Chingfield Street to the north, stepping up to 5-storey and then 10-storey. These photographs show the work currently taking place on Plot G, which is to the south of Plot A. This building is a 10-storey building, which will be occupied by the School of Public Health. This slide shows the context of the proposed development in terms of the surrounding area and the typology, and it highlights how the proposed building intends to fit in with the surrounding context. In terms of, obviously, you've got the yellow element there, which is up to 3 stories. Then you've got the central element, which is of a similar height to the grad pad building. And then you've got a part 12-storey element, which is highlighted in blue, which is of a similar height and context to most of the other buildings within the campus, including Plot G. The next set of slides are just some CGIs of the proposed development. So this is obviously looking southwards from Wood Lane. And again, it just showing the context and how the different typology and heights vary in a very short distance from, obviously, the residential elements up to the 35-storey tower. This image is taken from the central square, and it shows the application site over here alongside the grad pad building, Block B, and the soon to be completed building, Plot G. This is a view looking at the entrance, the student accommodation entrance. It's a double height entrance with a colonnade, which connects up to Wood Lane. And again, this emphasizes that this is effectively the front entrance of the development, and it's facing the central square. And this is a view of the proposed development alongside Plot G. Next image is to show you again the context and of the stepping arrangement within the development. So along here, you've got the 3-storey element, which again is very similar to the heights of the grad pad buildings. Then we've got a 2-step arrangement up to 9 stories with a roof terrace at that level. And then there's the outline of the 12-storey element, which is the part of the building which is set furthest away from the northern boundary. This is an elevation, the west elevation looking eastwards. So you can see the building in context with the Wood Lane residential properties to the north and the grad pad building to the south. This elevation is the east elevation, looking westwards. The dotted line, blue line is there effectively just to show where the amendments have taken place in context between the original submission and the revised submission. So the changes have been primarily to the east elevation. This is the elevation of the south elevation with the colonnade and the entrance to the student accommodation. This slide is just is a slice through the building showing the materials proposed. And then I'm just going to quickly run through the floor plans. So on the ground floor, we have commercial use up to 430 square meters. The entrance lobby to the student accommodation on the upper floors. There's a security office, which will manage all the vehicle movements in and out of the campus, together with all the other ancillary facilities, cycle space and refuge space. This is the first floor. So on the first floor, there's a provision of sort of a communal dining area and a small games room. And on this floor, we have 25 25 student rooms, comprising a mix of both the standard and sort of premium rooms. And then as we go up the building, obviously you start seeing setbacks. So the roofs themselves will be green roofs. So this is the second setback with the terrace area, which is 180 square meters in area. And then this is the roof plan. This is just a quick cross-section through the building. So it shows where the communal area will be at first floor level, and there'll be a green roof above that. The 9-story element, and then the 12-story element. This particular slide shows what was approved, the last approval for the wider master plan in terms of the works to the landscaping and public realm. So obviously, some of the residents have highlighted the condition or the current position regarding the central square. That is as an interim position at the moment, in terms of obviously there are works still in progress on the campus in terms of delivering the last 2 plots. And the proposal is to effectively carry out quite an extensive landscaping scheme once the building works are completed. I put this slide in just so you can see a comparison between the last consented scheme. So the last consented scheme was a Part 3, Part 5, Part 7 commercial building. The proposal we have now is a Part 3, Part 6, Part 9, and then Part 12 building. Now, the building itself will be approximately just under 10 meters taller, but that is in respect to this part of the development over here, which is where the additional 3 floors are. And that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. So I'd now like to ask Catherine Fieldgate from Imperial College London to speak. If you'd like to address the committee, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening about this new addition to the White City and Hammersmith campus. My name's Catherine Fieldgate. I've been working at Imperial for a number of years now. So since 2009, Imperial has been investing in White City to help create an innovation district that brings together scientists, engineers, clinicians, businesses, and other organizations to tackle real-world challenges. Today, we have around 4,000 people on our campus, and the activities that happen in our buildings are truly extraordinary. For example, in the iHub and Scale space, we have companies that began as student startups, now raising millions of pounds in funding and creating hundreds of jobs to develop innovative products. One of my favorite examples is Maltus Media, who are creating ingredients to scale up meat production from cells, not animals. Over in the invention rooms on Wood Lane, our community engagement hub, our programs now reach 3,000 local children and adults each year. Our last cohort of students on our Maker Challenge program developed prototypes as varied as the electric ukulele for the hearing impaired and motion activated gloves with LED lights to help cyclists signal safely at night. For the White City and Innovation District to be successful, we need to attract and retain talented staff and students from across the world. We know that our students struggle to find safe and secure accommodation in London that makes them feel part of a community. So our proposal for Plot A would help address this, providing 260 16 high-quality studios for students, with 35% of these let at deeply discounted rates and a proportion designed to be fully accessible. Together with much-needed new accommodation, the ground floor of the building has been designed to allow for a range of uses and to provide an active frontage to draw people, and we mean by that everyone, onto our campus. As you've heard, the building has been designed to step back from the properties on Shinfield Street in the same way as the existing Wood Lane studios, to ensure that the street retains its residential feel. More widely, Section 106 contributions will go towards the public realm, street scene, local infrastructure to improve connectivity and the environment. Our proposal have evolved through productive collaboration with officers and in response to feedback from the design review panel and public consultation. We received many helpful and insightful comments during consultation and Plot A, as well as on the college's broader master plan. We've taken these into consideration and looking to implement them when we bring forward future planning applications too. Right now, we are finalising plans to complete the central square, and in the new year, once the School of Public Health has been completed, we're looking to bring this forward. We're really excited to finally open up the central square as a green place for everyone to enjoy. So as a long-term investor in the local area, Imperial is committed to building a sustainable place that is inclusive and inspiring. We feel the proposals will make an important contribution to what is already a dynamic campus and community. We hope that you will support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Much appreciated. Thank you. So now we can move to committee members' questions for officers. And who would like to start with the questions? Councillor Harcourt.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to say, this is actually the ward that I represent. So I've received a fair number of representations from residents, mainly in Inham Road and the streets surrounding it, Inham, Glenroy, Nascot, etc., about this, and also from other of the tenants associations in the area. I suppose one of the key things that they talk about is they've obviously had to put up with 10 coming up to 11 years worth of building works and so on. And while there shouldn't necessarily be some sort of payoff for them, they feel that they having put up with all of this, the promises that were made when the original master plan was put forward haven't come to fruition. So things like the nice green Soho style Soho Square, the cycle path through the from Shinfield Street under the Westway, avoiding Wood Lane, hasn't been there. There's the restaurant, the health centre, and various other things like that. And these are all things that were originally promised. And so the feeling, I suppose, is that there is perhaps, this may be going a bit far, but there's a lack of trust in Imperial College that they will actually deliver what they've promised. So could you perhaps update me on what the situation is with all of those? That's just the first part of this.
Yes, obviously, in terms of the delivery of the master plan, yes, at the moment it's taken 10 years, but we're now up to the last particular plot to be developed. As I explained in the presentation, the situation in terms of the central square is that that is an interim situation in terms that, and there are proposals to bring forward the landscaping as approved as part of the original master plan to deliver that on the completion of Plot G and Plot A. So there will be a central square which will be delivering both soft and hard landscaping.
And the cycle route and the health centre and the restaurant, I know there's a cafe there.
In terms of a cycle route, there's obviously the north-south connections. Obviously, Imperial have outlined planning permission to develop the South Campus, which is on the south side of the Westway. There are already connections and works taking place underneath the Westway in terms of the delivery of a large cycle hub and a level threshold now between the North and South Campus. Obviously, that will significantly improve once works proceed, obviously on the South Campus. There will be a connection between Plot A and the grad pad building, as per the original master plan. And in terms of the health facility, I think under the last planning permission, that got converted to sort of community facilities within Plot G. So so there will, as part of the School of Public Health, there will also be sort of community facility provided there.
Okay, I mean, obviously the cycle route is quite an important one because Wood Lane is not, and that bit of is not the best of places to cycle down. And as you will recall, there was a very unfortunate accident resulted in the death of a cyclist not so very long ago. And certainly that's prompted people to be much more pushy in terms of wanting this cycle route as soon as possible. The other thing that came up as a question is also the issue of the underpass connecting where Oxford Gardens or that sort of area on the Kensington side through to this site, which was a part of the original master plan, a part of the original agreement, which I know has been raised on numerous occasions by at least one person. What's the current status of that?
Through the chair, I'll come on to that. I just wanted to make a point that John hinted at there. I mean, the imperial presence in this part of the borough now is much more than this northern master plan site. You know, the much bigger South Campus. There's aspirations there, obviously, about connectivity east, west, and north, south, not just in terms of the public access, but in terms of the access between North and South Campus as well. Part of that is the long-standing aspiration for the underpass, as they're calling it, which is the link east-west under the railway tracks that would connect the Imperial Campus, North Campus to North Kensington. Imperial have always been very vocal about wanting that to be provided. Residents in RBKC equally vocal about the benefits to them as they perceive it. At the time of the original master plan back in 2012, I think it was clearly identified there as something that we were looking to facilitate. It is fair to say that that's taken a great deal of time and effort to get to where we are now, and it's been delayed. Now, in fairness to Imperial, that's not on them. This is very much an ongoing discussion. The Network Rail, as you can imagine, given that we have to go under the railway, are very heavily involved. So that work is still ongoing. There is a drive both from the council, from RBKC, obviously, in terms of the benefits to them, from Imperial and their agents, and from Network Rail, it seems. But it's it will result in a couple of applications in due course, one to us, one to RBKC, but we're not there yet. But it's not through the lack of trying, particularly by Imperial and other colleagues. Just to add on that as well, although that was an aspirational issue back in 2012, the situation's turned up slightly now, and it's part of a much wider initiative to improve the public realm and to improve connectivity. Yes, it started with that. Then we've got the north-south through. There'll be issues around, I'm sure, South Campus when that comes forward in more detail. But there are wider council initiatives here as well, which to do with public realm, to do with connectivity through to the Scrubs, for example, and then HS2 station. So it's very much on the agenda at the moment. We're looking at opportunities to, wherever possible, and in partnership with appropriate organisations in terms of the landowners, to make a significant contribution in the area to improving connectivity and public realm. And the underpass is part of that, albeit one that started a long, long time ago.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I couple of more questions? I think it is important, given the number of objections that we've had from local residents, that I do explore these. We talked about that. Yeah, another one, which is something that I don't think has been generally considered, is the effect of these tall buildings on residents who want to install solar panels. I think I sent through to you a while ago a note from one of the residents there who had tracked the sun and the shading during the day and the loss of kilowatts or whatever it is as the sun moved over, and concerned about the effect on people wanting to install solar panels, which is obviously something we're quite keen on doing, and as part of our climate change and climate emergency policy. So has that sort of thing been looked into as part of the sunlight and daylight and overshadowing and such like procedure?
In terms of obviously the report sets out the assessment based on impacts on daylight, sunlight and overshadowing, and the scheme was seen to be considered acceptable in terms of the impacts. Obviously, we did pass on the comment raised with regard to the impact on the existing solar panels to the property referred to, and the response that we received back was that it was considered that this particular building did not specifically impact on that particular property. Obviously, I think there may be, I think there's obviously concerns and due to the orientation because of obviously maybe the taller building. But with regards specifically to this particular building itself, it was considered that there were no adverse impacts in terms of overshadowing to the neighbouring properties to the north.
What was I going to say? Another query that's come up. I don't know. This is one of the ones that actually went through to you, but it was sent to me and my fellow ward councillors. Was regarding the reasons behind this particular development. The suggestion is that perhaps Imperial College is acting beyond its educational remit in setting itself up almost as a commercial enterprise, renting out properties. Have you got any comments you can make on that?
Through the chair. There's existing student accommodation on Shinfield Street, which is historic, and obviously it works well. And Imperial have taken that success as an opportunity to redesign this part of the master plan, where previously it was more research and development. In that particular case, I mean, it's not unusual for this to happen, you know, given that they have both North Campus and the South Campus, and if you're looking at overall provision across the estate, it's common for master plans to be revisited on occasion and for different priorities to come up. In this particular case, there's a degree of synergy between the existing grad pads, which, as I say, are very successful, and the proposed development here. But there is also a crucial difference in the sense that this is obviously a standalone application. It seeks to take its keys from the grad pad in terms of the stepped massing from Shinfield Street. But this is a particular case where there's a requirement for 35% of the student accommodation to be affordable. And, you know, in that sense, it differs. In terms of the use, my understanding, and this is information that Imperial have made available to us, is that the upper 80% of the existing grad pads are occupied by Imperial students. 85 and 87, I think, were the figures that were mentioned to me in the last couple of years. So there's no real evidence to support that. I mean, I'm sure that there are degrees of flexibility, and you need to have those in terms of accommodation that's not being used, for example. But in this case, it's student accommodation. It couldn't be used for C3 use, which is general residential, without need for planning permission. And we are seeking to, as we would do in any purpose-built student accommodation scheme now, we are seeking to, whilst allowing the student accommodation during term time, allow a degree of flexibility outside of term time. But at the same token, by linking it through to educational uses, whether it be lectures, whether it be staff, whether it be conferences. So we will be looking to have a further discussion with Imperial about how that might work best for them, whilst making sure that we are consistent in our approach, shall we say, to this type of accommodation. The borough members will be aware of the one that was approved in on the Magistrates Court in Hammersmith, one of the more recent sort of large scale ones. So I have a question in my own mind about the extent to which that is a material planning consideration. I'll be honest, although members obviously are entitled to take it as they see fit. But I think even if you are of the view that it is, then I don't feel that the circumstance of this case is such that it would constitute any grounds for refusing planning permission. I think, as in most cases, you know, this is a matter of planning benefits and planning balances. You know, unless you're building a single-story extension, you're going to have to exercise that judgment And this is one of those situations. This application has been assessed on its own merits. Granted, it's part of a wider master plan. It's also part of the opportunity area, the regeneration area, where there's an expectation that you maximise the development in order to hit, you know, targets that we have in terms of deliverability, residential, etc. That said, it has to wash its own face. So you'll find in the report there an assessment of why we feel the scale is acceptable in this location. There are balanced arguments then about the impact. There are issues there to how it plugs into. Is there a wider master plan which has already been delivered? And we've touched on some of those in terms of the improved connectivity and the further aspirations in that respect in terms of linking this part of the Borough to HS2 to the northwest. So I think, you know, it's a consideration. You might feel that it's not, in my view, one that you could successfully defend on appeal. It does go to the value perhaps that Imperial bring to the borough in terms of an organisation who knows what its needs are and has demonstrated that, you know, that the majority of the accommodation they have provided for students is used very much for that purpose. So I have to say, you know, I don't think it's grounds for refusing planning permission, as I say, and it's part of a wider discussion.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more points. The first one, you recall about 227 Wood Lane, and the tall building there was just on the border or just outside the border of the area designated for tall buildings. Is this, I'm not quite clear, this area that we're talking about where plot A is that within the area designated for tall buildings within the local plan?
Yeah, through the chair, this is in the regeneration area, stroke opportunity area, whereas the other one is directly opposite, but not in it.
Just to clarify, I suppose the final point at the moment that I want to make is something I couldn't understand was this PTAL point. It's 6A, but according to a manual assessment, but according to London Transport or whoever, it's 2. There's a significant difference between those two. What is the actual position and how did that arrive at?
The PTAL for the whole of the campus is actually within 6, but specifically the site itself is because it's at the northern end is a PTAL 2. Obviously, you're rightly picking up that there's quite a difference there between within a very short distance. So I think what's being carried out is a sort of a manual assessment, a more up-to-date assessment, and obviously we need to take regard to the accessibility of the site to public transport in terms of its proximity to the underground stations and also to local bus services. So whilst clearly we need to acknowledge that specifically the site itself, it's got a current reading of PTAL 2, the overall campus itself has got a PTAL 6.
Okay, that still sounds odd to me because there's a bus stop with God knows how many routes right outside plot A. You can't get to that from the east by all accounts at the moment, but that's a decision elsewhere. So let's leave that one alone for the moment.
An aspiration we have to connect that part of the borough to what's going on here at the top of Wood Lane. You're right.
And just with regards to the PTAL, so are you saying that this particular site has PTAL 2, or this whole section of the master plan is PTAL 2?
The whole of the North Master Plan has a PTAL reading of 6. I think specifically the site outlined in red has got a PTAL 2.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that does seem odd to me as well. Do you know off the top of your head, for example, what the PTAL rating is for the grad pad, sort of just next to it? Lower, higher?
I would assume it'd be very similar to this particular plot, given it's on the same alignment.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just go to the slide showing the 3D aerial view. Just want to ask about 227 Wood Lane, which we approved here, I think, earlier this year. Just want to remind myself, where exactly is 227 Wood Lane? Which one of those sites is it?
Yes, the application site for 227 was this sort of triangular piece of land here.
Okay. And if you could remind me the number of stories?
It's a part 18 stories for the co-living, ground plus 6 for the Women's Pioneer
Okay,
housing
great.
block.
Thank you. And also just to ask about something in the addendum, page 47, the external courtyard at level 2 will not be accessible space for occupants. If in the massing, you could just show me exactly what that's referring to, please. Thanks.
Yes, Chair. It relates to this area here.
Thank you. Could
So
you
this is on the second floor.
Sure. Could you show me in the massing image, like
Yeah,
the 3D?
sorry.
Sorry, is that okay? Thank you.
It's this level here.
Okay, thank you. And will that just be a flat roof, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing up 227, which actually neatly ties into just a comment more than a question. If you recall, when we had that particular application before the committee, one of my concerns that I had raised was with respect to the cycle storage. Particularly, it is something that we are actively encouraging members of the public and residents, should I say, to engage in. We are, of course, aware that electronically assisted cycles and scooters are becoming increasingly popular. And my concern when that application came before, in the same way with this, is that it is a particularly tall building. Now, I'm pleased to see that there is obviously going to be secure cycle storage, but I would encourage that if this application is to be approved tonight, that an agreement be sought to ensure that there is adequate charging facilities in that section to ensure that at no point do e-bikes or e-scooters end up being brought into the accommodation aspects of this development to be charged in a very tall building. I think that would support the adaptation of the additional staircase, which is, of course, for a fire safety measure. So that's more of a comment than a question to members.
Yes, through the chair, just a couple points. So obviously, officers within the addendum are seeking to amend the condition relating to the provision of cycle parking within the development, subject to further review. Also, I'd like to highlight that within the sort of the wider campus, in terms of what's being delivered, there's a large cycle hub facility that's been provided underneath the Westway. Now, I think there's the provision of about 1,000 cycle spaces within that hub, and I believe that there is provision for e-scooter charging there as well. Also within the wider campus itself, on the North Campus, well, this is more specifically related to the car parking. There's going to be e-charging for the parking provision as well.
While I am pleased to hear that there is that provision being made, I mean, humans are obviously creatures of habit and convenience. And for those future residences of this development, the likelihood is that if they do own e-bike or an e-scooter, which are valuable assets, that they are going to look to secure them as close to where they reside. So I would imagine this would be inside the building itself, in the storage which you've got up on the screen at the moment. So I would repeat my suggestion that it be included as part of that future agreements.
Yes, we can obviously take that away and discuss that with Imperial. Obviously, we want to have a wider conversation with regard to the cycle provision. So that is a particular point that we can discuss with them further.
Can I just clarify, Councillor, is your concern that we should be picking this up in some management plans for the student accommodation and the building generally, or is it more of a physical thing?
In both senses, in a management plan to ensure that e-bikes and e-scooters are not being brought up into residences, but also just in general to ensure that there is such provision as kind of an active deterrent, so that it's already there. There's no need for people to consider bringing it up.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Shabbat.
Thank you, Chair. I have two different questions that tie into what the Chair and the Councillor have just talked about. The first one is if you could go back to slide 26 on your presentation, please. Oh, well, we've got different numbers. Apologies. This is the slide I used. Oh no, that's the one. Sorry. So actually, I saw that on floor 9 seems to be a drawing of a person. So actually the question was, is this rooftop accessible to students?
Yes, through the chair, within the development, there is the provision of an outdoor terrace area, which is 180 square meters in area, so that it will be accessible. It's the only roof within the development that will be accessible to occupants of the building.
That's great. I'm just thinking, if I'm right, this faces north onto Shinfield, and I know we've had messages from residents who have said to us that they're concerned by overlooking and loss of privacy. So I was just wondering, particularly, what do we have in there that provisions and sort of caters for the possibility of that? Is the windows glazed or any type, or again, nothing against students. We were once that, but it's the age of parties and general fun, and so what do you have on there that also means that residents won't have noise coming from there?
Yeah, there's first of all, obviously the terrace will needs to be screened. So there is a screen around the terrace. There's also a condition attached to the recommendation restricting the hours of use of the terrace as well.
No, that's very good, thank you. The second part goes back to the provision of cycling. So I, for the interest of democracy, am very bad at math, and so I still counter that there is a proposal for 216 rooms, 100 indoors cycling storage on the ground floor, and 2 times 75 outside, which is 250, which is obviously more than there are people potentially living in a building. But I'm just wondering if those numbers have been increased from the previous proposal, where you essentially thought, students are very likely to have cycle, bikes, etc. So has that been increased from the previous proposal? And the second part of the question is, some of those stands, it says on the report, will sit between plot A and plot G having also been increased. So has that been taken into account, that essentially we've got a cycle parking, both outdoors and indoors provision that was maybe accounting for previous numbers?
The development itself includes, it's 198 cycle spaces in total, so it's 170 long stay and 26 short stay. In terms of the 26 short stay, they are the provision that you've identified between plot A and G. Those spaces were actually part of the master plan, so that is a wider provision. Obviously, officers have assessed the provision within this development. Obviously, this particular development is for a student accommodation development, whereas previously the previous planning permission that was granted was for an office research and development scheme. So obviously we've assessed this particular application on its own particular merits, and we feel that the provision, the cycle provision, is acceptable in accordance with the London Plan standards.
Yep, thank you very much. That's very helpful. I had another question about access and servicing. So you provide us with a plan that suggests that trucks or any other things to service the building will come onto the campus site from Wood Lane. We also note that Shinfield Street is blocked between Wood Lane and Shinfield Street itself. I know that residents have said they were worried about potentially taxis or trucks or anything really going on to Shinfield. Does the plan, well, thank you, yeah, you've brought it up. Does any of that plan on changing that block at the end of Shinfield that separates that street from the main road?
No, not at all. That will remain as currently exists. So there's no vehicle access from Shinfield Street. All vehicle access to this particular building and the wider campus is from Wood Lane between plot A and plot G. Obviously, there'll be a management concierge within the ground floor of the building that will manage all vehicle movements in and out. So all deliveries to this particular building will take place within the campus itself.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. And the terrace that is accessible to students, what are the hours of use?
I think the condition states from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. Yeah, condition number 29.
So 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Pascu-Tiburi.
Thank you very much. A couple from me, if I may. The first one is relating to windows and lighting. I was a bit concerned that for the poor people in GradPad, only 19% of daylight VSC and 32% for daylight NSL would meet the recommended standards. That seemed to me to be pretty low. I was also slightly worried to read a couple of paragraphs later that because these are bedrooms, they don't matter quite as much. I think if that is not just a bedroom, it's the only room you have, then it matters quite a bit. And I was wondering, if this is acceptable, what would be unacceptable?
Yes, obviously, in terms of the assessment, there are obviously going to be impacts on the GradPad student units. Obviously, it's primarily to one elevation, so we're talking about obviously one elevation out of the 4 blocks. Obviously, these are not residential units; they're student accommodation. So they are designed obviously for student use. Obviously, you have a bed. In terms of what the layout, the desk would more than likely be closest to the window. We've obviously taken the assessment on the basis that given that this isn't a standard C3 residential development, but rather student accommodation, and given that the development is within their own campus, we felt that that this was acceptable in this instance.
Thank you very much. Another area of concern is the reduction of communal space by 86 square meters, which I think gives about 2 square meters per resident as communal space. Is that really enough?
Yes, we spoke to Imperial about that. Obviously, although this building will have sort of linkages to the GradPad building, and they within the GradPad blocks, there are community facilities within that, where obviously students within this building can use those facilities. Notwithstanding that, the building itself does provide common space as indicated at provision of 2 square meters, which when we discussed it with the GLA, they felt it was acceptable.
Thank you very much. A couple of further things, if I may. I was quite intrigued by the methodology behind the idea that this would cause roughly 20 additional taxi trips per day. Does that include things like students getting Amazon deliveries or takeaways? Something that many students in my experience do.
The trip generation through the chair, the trip generation is based on methodology on comparable sites, based on surveys being undertaken of those uses, and then based on those surveys over those periods of days, you have a number of calculation of the number of anticipated trips for the department. And so it does include taxis or other kinds of movements in relation to student use. There is also, as part of the obligations, a requirement for a delivery and servicing plan and a concierge service to minimise the impact of those deliveries as well.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Final one, if I may, on point 4G, which is about the construction management plan. It says 800 to 18 hours, 100 Mondays to Fridays, and 800 to 13 hours on Saturdays. Could we have within that some specific reference to bank holidays, please? Sorry, it's a bit of the Councillor Alex Carmel memorial point.
Thanks. And so the entrance to the building is at the bottom of the image we're looking at now, right? If you could just show with the mouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
The entrance to the student accommodation is on this corner here.
Sure. So if there were going to be, taxi pickups and deliveries, it wouldn't be affecting Shinfield Street that much anyway, because it would come off Wood Lane into the middle of the site, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. They'd
Okay.
come into the central square.
Sure. And also, I think, if the concern is about car usage, then I'd say most food deliveries are done with bicycle or motorbike. So I don't think it would increase car usage necessarily. But even if it did, I think that's fair that it's coming into the middle of the site rather than because the car would have to go all the way around and down into Shinfield Street and then back all the way out. So it wouldn't really make much sense. But, okay, thank you. Any other questions? No further questions. Okay, brilliant. So now we can move to voting. So we'll first vote on whether recommendation 1 in the report is agreed, and that is on page 11 of the report. So we'll first start with Councillor Chabot-Verdier. Will you be voting for, against, or not voting?
For.
Councillor Harcourt?
For.
Councillor Souslous?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascu-Tibure?
For.
I'll also be voting for. And now we'll move to recommendation 2, which is also on page 11. Councillor Chabot-Verdier?
For.
Councillor Harcourt?
Sorry, for.
Councillor Souslous? For. Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascu-Tibure?
For.
I'll also be voting for. So that application has been approved. Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending or watching tonight's meeting. The draft minutes will be published on the website shortly, and they'll be formally approved at the next meeting, which will be on the 7th of November, 2023. And if anyone has any questions in the meantime, please feel free to contact the case officer in the application report. Thank you very much. Good night.